Good evening and welcome. I'm Josh Brumberg, president of the CUNY Graduate Center, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to tonight's town hall discussion, We the People, Taking Action to Save Our Democracy. The topic of democracy, how to sustain and protect it, has never felt more urgent. We are honored to host this vital conversation led by our friend and champion of civic engagement, State Senator Liz Krueger. For everyone who is new to the Graduate Center, we are one of 25 colleges in the City University of New York system, and we grant most of CUNY's doctoral degrees in 31 fields, ranging from biochemistry to urban education. We also offer 18 master's programs spanning the academic alphabet, starting with astrophysics, running through women and gender studies. We are proud to be one of the largest and most diverse graduate institutions in the country, and the only public research-intensive graduate school in New York City. Our community of over 3,100 students and 1,700 faculty members is united by a mission advancing knowledge for the public good and bringing learning from the lab and the seminar room to the broader community that we serve. That mission includes making ideas accessible through events like this one. We believe that rigorous research and open dialogue are essential to a healthy democracy. We're especially honored to welcome Senator Krueger. She is not only a longstanding ally of CUNY and a champion for public higher education, but also a tireless advocate for democratic values. Currently the chair of the New York State Finance Committee, she has led the charge on good government reforms, from overhauling campaign finance laws to bringing transparency and equity to the state budget process. She has also been a powerful voice for tenants' rights, affordable housing, and broader access to health care and essential services. Please join me in welcoming Senator Liz Krueger, who will now lead us in what promises to be a timely and inspiring discussion. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you. And I just want to start off by thanking Josh, the president, who's doing a really tremendous job here at the CUNY Graduate Center, and for them to open themselves up to us. And they have all this great technology. So I want to start by pointing out, everyone who has an empty seat next to them, raise your hand. See, there's a lot of empty seats here. So people who are on the standing up the aisle, there are places to sit. Just want to make sure nobody feels like they can't get a seat, because it's hard to tell in the dark, but there's a lot of seats here up front. So if you want to come down and just slide in, that would be great, because we want everybody to be comfortable, because we have a tremendous program for you. So I've been a senator for 23 years. I've been a New Yorker since 1983, sorry. And I've always been so proud to be a New Yorker, and I still am, and I love the city and the state. But I actually never imagined I would be standing in front of an audience of people in America, in New York, in my lifetime, and saying, oh my God, we've become a fascist society in less than 3 months. How could this possibly be? And I know we're all thinking that, and a lot of us are saying it, and it actually can be pretty scary to be saying it, because you know this line, if they're after you, you're not actually paranoid? I think it's true. And some of us decided to turn off and just watch Netflix movies since January 20th. I get it. You're all here, so I think you're like part of the group that couldn't do it. And we probably are spending too much time following all the chaotic, insane, seemingly illegal activity coming out of Washington, D.C., counting on somebody to come along and wake us up and say, no, it was just a bad movie, this is not real. But it is, so we can't close our eyes, we can't turn away, we have to keep working harder and harder to think through what our responses are going to be, how we fight this until we take back our country. And there are young people here and older people here. So for the older people like me, we have to keep fighting because of all the younger people. And we've got to make sure we save our country and our planet for them. So some of you are parents and know what I mean. Some of you are grandparents and know what I mean. I mean, just now I was reading an article about, it's Earth Day. Yay! And frankly, I'm really proud that I've personally been name-checked by the president with an executive order trying to destroy a piece of legislation we passed here in New York, the Climate Change Superfund Act, which would put an assessment on the biggest oil and gas companies in the world for creating all this climate damage. And so, yes, I expected them to sue us. We knew that. And the AG was ready to go with the lawsuit response. But they also thinking maybe they wouldn't win in court because we wrote the bill really well, that they would go to the guy in the White House and get him to write an executive order outlawing the state law. But it's not really that easy to do, so instead it's an executive order ordering Department of Justice to come up with some way to make sure it doesn't go into effect. So I am sort of honored by this, I have to say. You know, makes you sort of feel like it's worth it. You know, but again, I'm a legislator. It's hard for them to drag me off at night. But I was just reading an article today that the heads of so many of our key environmental organizations throughout this country are being threatened with slap lawsuits, are being threatened with FBI investigations, Department of Justice coming to their homes. Their staffs think that they can't even put anything in writing anymore, being told they should probably get rid of all their emails. Well, I've followed international environmentalism for years, so I know that I knew these stories from other countries where environmental activists would actually ended up being sued or taken off to jails, but in terrifying countries, nothing like ours. And now it's starting to happen here. And we'll try as a state and a city to be as protective as we can. And I figure we're all putting most of our hopes in the courts to stand up for our rights. But it's so terrifying because it's so fast and furious and it keeps coming. And we just have to be organized and prepared. And I'm just looking at my watch because I want to make sure that I am not doing anything beyond time because we have amazing people here tonight to talk to us about some of the things that we are facing, but also things we can do about it. So I want to just quickly invite my friend, the New York City Controller, Brad Lander, to come up for just a minute to say a few things.
Good evening. Happy Earth Day. Let's hear it for New York State Senator Liz Krueger. Amongst everything else, better dressed for Earth Day than I am. But let's, look, your state senator is both a fierce fighter, someone who stands up to bullies, someone who knows when democracy's on the line, but also someone who does the homework, whether that's delivering constituent service or making sure that that Superfund law is written in a way that there's no chance Donald Trump's executive order is going to be able to overturn it. Am I right? So thank you, Liz, and thanks to all of you. Because Liz mentioned, climate, and today is Earth Day, and yesterday we lost the Pope, who was a great climate champion, and Donald Trump is using Earth Day to try to push forward to threaten those climate leaders. He's even apparently threatening to try to take tax exemption away from climate organizations. He's already canceled $1 billion in climate resilience that included $300 million specifically targeted for public housing in New York City and for communities that were hit badly by Ida and Ophelia. But thankfully, people are pushing back. You're going to hear later from New York State Attorney General Tish James. Because of her lawsuit, they are not allowed to touch the IRA funds, the greenhouse gas reduction funds. $20 billion she and others are protecting. And I want you to know that here in New York City, your pension funds, do we have any New York City retirees in the room? Raise your hands. First, we're not letting them touch your health care. But second, your pension funds are the boldest on climate in the country. We are the first public pension fund to divest from fossil fuels. We set a bold goal of being net zero by 2040, and we're ahead of schedule. And today, standing with some of those threatened climate advocates, we made a big announcement. We just became the first big public pension funds in the country to hold our investment managers, our asset managers accountable. They have reports due to us on June 30th, and they're either going to step up and get consistent with net zero, or if they bend the knee to Donald Trump on climate, then we're going to recommend that they not manage pension funds for you and other New Yorkers. You're going to hear tonight about all the ways people are standing up, and we all have to find our platform to do it on whichever issue, on immigration, on civil rights, on democracy. You've got incredible panelists, but this is a time to decide, am I going to be one of those people or one of those institutions who caves, or am I going to be one of those people or institutions who stands up and fights? I got to get my legal ducks in a row. I got to have good allies. I got to have good partners, and then I can stand up, whether that's on climate or immigration or budget or healthcare or democracy. Liz quoted, if you're not paranoid, if they're really out to get you. To me, this is a time to quote that Martin Niemöller poem. First they came for the socialists, and I did not speak up because I was not a socialist. And then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak up because I was not a trade unionist. And then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak up because I was not a Jew. I am a Jew, but Martin Niemöller, I guess, was not. And then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak up for me. This is the time at the beginning to speak up and stand up strong, get all hands on deck, and fight like hell for our democracy.
And he used the poem I was going to use, so there we go. Perfect. Thank you, Brad. Thank you for all the work you do every day for all of us here in New York. I want to just quickly thank the organizations who are participating in our activist resource fair. When you came in, if you didn't have time to go around to the tables, you can afterwards, because they'll be staying after the event also. But I just want to list out, because we keep getting calls and emails from people. Who do I work with? How do I find out information? I want to do things. So we couldn't possibly have everybody be guest speakers, so we invited some of the great organizations in the city doing this work to be part of our activist resource fair. So outside, we have Common Cause, the Community Service Society, Empire State Indivisible, they're here on the dais also, Episcopal Diocese of New York, Food and Water Watch, Green Faith, Interfaith Center, Invest in Our New York, Legal Women Voters, New York Immigration Coalition, New York Jewish Agenda, New York State Alliance of Retired Americans, the New York State Office of the Attorney General, and of course the Attorney General will be here with us, the National Institute on Reproductive Rights, the Open Hearts Initiative, and Third Act. And I guarantee you know other organizations, and we will just keep trying to broaden the universe of people that we can help direct people to. I want to point out again, raise your hand if you still have an empty seat next to you, because more people walked in the door. So all you people standing there in the back, if any of you want seats, just look for a hand and you can come right into the audience and sit down. I know some are my staff. You have to stay, I'm sorry. And I also want to thank profusely my amazing staff who were all involved in putting this together tonight, and it was quite the production. I couldn't do anything without them. So we actually have over 1,300 RSVPs for the live stream on top of all of us here tonight in the room, and apparently people can keep signing up and keep turning on, so to speak. So I'm so excited that the response was so huge to this, as my staff knew it would be. So we're going to hear from 4 presenters. Donna Lieberman, Executive Director of the New York State Civil Liberties Union. Rosanna Eugenio, Legal Services Coordinator for the New York Immigration Coalition. Kellie Leeson, Lead at Empire State Indivisible. And of course, our own New York State Attorney General, Tish James. Yeah, she's not here yet, but don't worry, she's not scheduled to be here at the beginning. There are speakers' bios in the materials you received in advance, and there's also a note card to ask questions. So during this event, my staff will come up and down the aisles, and if you have note cards because you've asked a question, you can pass it down to your right or your left, and we'll collect your questions. I can guarantee you we will not get to every question. Guarantee you. And in fact, some people actually gave us their questions in advance, which is always really helpful. So I apologize in advance that we won't get to all of your questions, but you may find some of them are already answered by the panelists, and some may be issues that you can take directly out to our advocacy friends at the outside tables who can follow up. Because again, pretty much any issue you really care about, because there are an awful lot of us and an awful lot of those issues, they're all under attack right now. Pretty much all of them. And so we have to be so vigilant and think about how we respond creatively and effectively and support each other to make sure that we don't fall into the doom and gloom of feeling like we're alone and there's nothing that can be done, because that is not true. And history shows us both the mistakes that have been made over and over again when people didn't learn the lessons of history, but also we learn from history that people rebuild even after bad things happen. So with that, I'm going to bring it to, or have Donna Lieberman, who's been one of the great fighters for civil liberties and responsibilities for our city and state for a very long time, without discussing ages. So I'd like to ask Donna to come up from the New York Civil Liberties Union.
Thank you so much, Liz. Thanks for inviting me. Thank you, everybody, for coming out tonight on this glorious day. Happy Earth Day. We better say Happy Earth Day as long as we have the Earth, you know? These guys are on a suicide trip. I'm not one to praise politicians. I'm just not. But I have to say how grateful I am to Liz, not just for inviting me here today. I mean, yeah, you give me a platform. But Liz has been an amazing leader in the state Senate, in New York, fighting for democracy, fighting for free speech, fighting for abortion rights, fighting for all the values that we hold dear that are essential to equality and justice for all in our city, our state, our country. And there aren't a whole lot like her. So thank you, Liz. Liz knows I don't praise politicians a lot. I don't have to tell you, we're living in really, really scary and bizarre times under an existential threat to democracy. You know, we at the ACLU spent months preparing, hoping against hope that we were preparing in vain, and we were as ready as could be. But honestly, nothing, not even Project 2025, read cover to cover, could have prepared us for what we are going through now. We thought that things were really horrific when the Supreme Court overturned Roe. And because of Dobbs, 19 states have banned virtually all abortions. 26 million women in our country now live in states where abortion is banned. And that includes 57% of all Black women of childbearing age. But what we're learning day after day after day is that Dobbs is just the tip of the iceberg. The Trump administration has launched an all-out assault on every aspect of our democracy. We are living through the biggest presidential power grab in the history of our country, one executive order after the next. Who makes laws by executive order? He does. And who really doesn't give a damn about what the law says, because law or no law, he ignores it, breaks contracts, ignores the constitutional limits of presidential power, destabilizing and destroying by executive order, by fiat, by bullying vital institutions and programs, healthcare, Social Security, schools, HIV/AIDS programs, even veterans benefits, our national parks, scientific research, the Smithsonian, FEMA, the list goes, and I've just started the list. And he's bullying and threatening everyone from the largest, most powerful law firms in the country, the ones without spines and the ones with spines, to entire states and cities, to colleges and universities, to the most vulnerable among us, our kids. Going after kids, directly going after trans kids, directly going after immigrant kids, and indirectly going after all kids. Dismantling the Department of Education, dismantling Medicaid, dismantling programs, after-school programs, and threatening retribution, ruthless retribution against anyone who ever stood up to him or tried to hold him accountable, and bragging about his plan to weaponize the Department of Justice, the IRS, and all the machinery of government, especially using the power of the purse to go after his critics. Remember, he was attacking immigrants, illegal immigrants, he said. He was going to get out every illegal immigrant. What's the cornerstone of his program against immigrants? He's going after hundreds and thousands of people who are in this country legally. Immigrants who have done everything they can to obey the law, to get legal status, whether it's as an asylum seeker, whether it's as a student, whether it's as a green card holder. Kilmar Abrego Garcia was here legally. Mahmoud Khalil was here legally. The Sackett's Harbor mom and her 3 kids who were picked up by ICE were here legally, going through the system, doing what they were told. And Trump didn't care. MAGA doesn't care. Homeland doesn't care. They abducted people. They are continuing a campaign of abduction and spiriting people to the most friendly place they can find, Louisiana or El Salvador. Take your pick. And they're going after students, permanent residents, U.S. citizens, using lies and stoking fear, and they say it outright. Well, we really want to get people to self-deport. That's what we call victory, he says. So we are living in the most lawless administration, perhaps, in history. This is not just McCarthyism. McCarthyism looks kind of bland. And my dad lost his job during the McCarthy era. My family was really screwed up during the McCarthy era. This is McCarthyism on steroids. But as New Yorkers, you know, I am so glad to be a New Yorker. Let me say that. As New Yorkers, we're relatively lucky because as the rest of the country elected Trump, New Yorkers went to the polls to protect New York and New York values. We passed Prop 1, the New York State Equal Rights Amendment, by a landslide. And I'll thank Liz again. Her leadership was instrumental in getting the Prop 1 through the legislature, in the drafting, in the floor debate, not once but twice, and then getting it passed by the voters. So we owe her. We owe her in our kind of way, not in a Trumpian kind of way. And what Prop 1 does, what the State Equal Rights Amendment does, is that it enshrines abortion rights and full equality into our state constitution. Gender equality, the whole range, protecting against sex discrimination, discrimination based on sexual orientation, gender identity. It protects LGBTQIA people fully under our state constitution. And it goes even further than that. It protects against discrimination based on ethnicity, national origin, and disability. And remember, during the campaign, they ran ads and said that we were enshrining immigrants' rights into our state constitution, and we were enshrining trans rights into our state constitution. And they said we should vote against it, but New Yorkers are smarter than that. By a landslide, we did just that. So that our right to equality doesn't depend on the whims of one bad election, right? So that if we were to get a bad governor or a bad Senate or a bad assembly, however you define bad, right, in one election, our rights could not be overturned, could not be repealed by repealing a statute. We have a state constitutional protection, and that is powerful. And we also have to, we at the NYCLU know that it is our job to make sure that we bring the right cases, that we help develop the jurisprudence of equality here in New York State under our state constitution, because we don't have one yet. We used to depend on the federal constitution that those guys are tearing up bit by bit, sometimes just wholesale. So we have our work cut out for us. It's never enough to win a victory. You got to make sure that the victory matters. And that's what we're doing. Another thing we did in New York was on voting rights. You know, Schmendrick in the White House, you know, issued an executive order. Sorry, my grandmother, she was smiling. You know, issued an executive order, right, to disenfranchise hundreds of thousands of the most vulnerable people. Well, it's an illegal executive order, of course, but what we've done in New York is to address the attack on voting rights that predated even this, right? We passed, after the Supreme Court eviscerated the Federal Voting Rights Act, we passed the state John L. Lewis Voting Rights Act that protects our right to vote here in New York State. And we've already won our first case in Nassau County, right? We challenged the racially gerrymandered county legislative districts, and they fought us. They fought us tooth and nail. It was so cool. They fought us really, really hard. But they got decimated by our lawyers in court, and they came asking for a settlement. And we settled it. We've redrawn the districts, and we got a big chunk of attorney's fees. Okay. You know, and as the law firms and some of the powerful universities, but thank God, I will brag about my alma mater now. Yes, I'm a Harvard graduate and proud to say that. I wrote my first check to Harvard since I graduated over 50 years ago last week. But I'm so proud, once again, to be a New Yorker, because even the New York City DOE, the State Department of Education, have refused to capitulate to the bully and have stood up and refused to take down diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. You know, people say to me, you have such a hard job. Thank you so much for what you do. Yeah, I have a hard job, but I don't know what else I would rather be doing or what else I could be doing. I am so grateful that I get to work day in, day out, to talk to people like you, to work to defend our rights against the avalanche. So I'm grateful for it. And we've got a strategy. I've got so much to say, basically. I have my phone up here, not to, like, you know, text. You know, I gotta check the time. I think I only have 3 or 4 minutes left. Oops. Anyway, but we've got a 3-pronged strategy at the ACLU and the NYCLU. We're challenging the power grabs in court. We're building a firewall for freedom in the blue states, including in New York, and we're educating people about what the issues are so that they can organize and get together and advocate to protect democracy. We have zillions of cases in court, it feels like zillions, challenging the immigration abuses. I am proud, I'm so proud that we represent Mahmoud Khalil and that, and with many others, and Rumea Ozturk, our Massachusetts affiliate, represents her along with the national office. I am so proud. I can't tell you how proud I am, how proud I was to read about our lawyers going in and getting a TRO from the Supreme Court to stop additional deportations to El Salvador. And we're doing more: birthright citizen, expedited removal, retaliation against sanctuary cities, sending detainees to Guantanamo, challenging the removal of a temporary protected status for Haitians and others. We're in court a lot.
What do you do if you win in court and Trump refuses to comply?
I'm not taking questions, you know. And you know, I'm going to have you evicted. No, just kidding. We're doing a lot of Know Your Rights trainings. We have materials outside, but look at our website and learn about it. But we have a New York Trump agenda, you know, and it's really important. Remember I said we're hardening the firewall? New York is a firewall. Well, we need to do more in New York. New York City is a sanctuary city. New York State is not a sanctuary state, and it should be. We have legislation pending in Albany that would prohibit the use of any government resources to support the deportation machine. We've got to get that passed, and we've got to give our legislators the courage to stand up and work in their constituencies to gain support for it, and be prepared to take whatever hit they have to in order to stand up and do the right thing. Am I done? Okay, so I'm not going to say anything else. We have shield law stuff to protect abortion beyond what we've done. What can you do? Okay, there's a lot you can do. Okay? You can help us build the firewall, learn about it. You don't have to write your senator. Yeah, she heard you. But the leadership and the governor need to hear from you day in, day out. Congress needs to hear from you also. We need to, you need to be in the streets. You need to be in the streets. You know the next demonstrations, I think, are May Day. Be there, right? There's a noon one for lawyers, there's 5:30 for labor, there's another one in Union Square, and there will be demonstrations constantly. Finally, I gotta say one more thing. We are the people who believe in the big tent. We are the people who believe in equity and inclusion. That means all of us. We are the people who believe that nobody should be singled out to be above or beneath the law. But we need to use our inclusivity to build a mass movement. And we've got to figure out, guys, how to work with people who don't agree with us on every single thing. We have too long been too precious about our discovery about what is right for the world. Well, I know that I'm absolutely right, but you do too, and we can't afford to dwell on that. We have to figure out how to build a mass movement with common ground that builds on our unity, on our common values. You can name it: justice, equality, dignity, health care, Social Security. You know what it is. Hands off everything we care about that they've got their hands on. We have to do that, and we have to support each other. And finally, one more thing, and then I'll shut up, which is some people are too vulnerable right now to speak out. That puts a burden on those of us who may not feel so vulnerable or may not be so vulnerable. So, yeah, it's about when they come for you and come for them, you need to speak out. It is your duty to learn what's going on and to be as loud as you possibly can and as effective as you possibly can, because democracy is on the line. Thank you.
One of the reasons why we love being New Yorkers. So we're going to shift schedule a little bit because I'm so delighted that our Attorney General, Letitia James, could get here early. So I'm going to bring her on next. I just also want to point out, with all the things we've already been saying, you know, it takes all of us. And so it is so, so important. I can't emphasize enough how important it is, not just that we have the Attorney General we have, who is fighting every day, but she's able to bring other Attorney Generals with her, because it can't just be one state. It has to be a nation. And the Attorney Generals of this country, the brave Attorney Generals who are willing to get out there and take leadership the way Tish James has been, are the ones who are going to turn this around in courts for us, even as we're fighting to take back our country through the elective process. And so sometimes you might hear some crap being said about Letitia James by some newspapers who don't care what facts are. And I just want to say publicly, when I heard one of those stories the other day, and her staff even reached out to say, do I need to explain anything? I was like, no. We know it's insane, and it's just the Trumpers attacking her, because our Attorney General is so brave and so strong and so effective in the court system that they'd have nothing to do but to try to attack her personally. And we're not going to let anybody believe that stuff, because we know who she is. And if you don't know who she is, I'm so glad you're here tonight to get to meet her and to just hear just a little bit. Right here, Tish, come on up, about all right. See, I'm introducing her, but she's a rock star. Welcome to my district.
I see. Oh my God.
All right. Woo! See? Silly of me to even try to introduce you. So I'm going to sit down and let you all hear from Letitia James, Attorney General of New York State.
Thank you. Thank you for that kind and warm introduction. And I don't know if I should thank you for introducing me after Donna Lieberman, but she's a dear friend and we work together on so many cases. And it's really critically important that everyone understand that we are living in some dangerous times. A lot of chaos and confusion and disorder, but it's intentional. It's meant to distract all of us. So you look over here while they're stealing over there, while they're engaging in all of these government contracts. But I'm so glad that I have a friend in the New York State Senate, Liz Krueger, who obviously is standing up and speaking truth to power. And I want to thank her for her support against these baseless allegations. The reality is that this is nothing more than Trump's revenge tour, and he finally got up to the J's. And he said I was on his enemies list, and after securing a $454 million judgment against Donald Trump, and interest is still accruing, by the way. But it's on appeal in the First Department, and so we await its decision. And as was mentioned, before the election, and because I was the Attorney General during Trump 1.0, I decided to organize all of the Democratic Attorneys General, 'cause a lot of them were new. And I said what we needed to do was prepare in anticipation, should Donald Trump win. And so I've asked all of the Democratic Attorneys General, we had a number of conferences, we had one here in New York, to analyze Project 2025, to analyze jurisdiction, to analyze venue, to analyze standing, to analyze our claims, causes of action, to look at all of the cases that we brought during Trump point 1 and be ready for Trump point 2. And we were. New York and California are the most well-resourced offices, and so a lot of the responsibility falls to New York, thanks to all of you. And so oftentimes these smaller states, we provide them with support, and we provide them with staff, and we provide them with research, and we work together collaboratively. And so the first executive order was birthright citizenship, as all of you know, which is in the 14th Amendment. And we immediately went to court with ACLU and with others. And that case is being argued before the United States Supreme Court. And the Attorney General, I believe, of New Jersey, it's between New Jersey and Washington, we're trying to decide who's going to argue the case because the Supreme Court said only one AG can argue the case. And so we've all decided that New Jersey should argue the case. We took a poll, and I hope, well, I shouldn't say that. I think it's going to be New Jersey. I love Washington, too. Sorry, Nick Brown, if you're listening. And so we will see, but I think New Jersey will probably argue the case. Trump is attacking so many institutions and programs that are vital to our city and to our country. We've set up a hotline, and you should hear the calls. Individuals who rely upon Social Security, individuals who call offices and cannot get return calls, and in some cases, no one even answers. People are concerned that they won't be able to pay their bills because they rely upon Social Security. And as you know, tonight, thousands of federal workers have been laid off, terminated. Head Start, the regional office at Federal Plaza, has been closed. They laid off all of the workers. And all of the offices, the centers themselves, have been calling our office, concerned about Head Start and concerned about children. Yeah, things are scary and they're very confusing. And this revenge tour, not only involves myself, it involves law firms and institutions and journalists and judges and elected officials and universities and immigrants and women. Our government is in chaos right now and in disarray. And this is nothing more than an attempt to concentrate power in the hands of one individual. And that's not democracy. And so I'm glad the one institution, the courts, have been pushing back. But as Donna mentioned, the other institution that has to push back are the people. Because this is your country, and our freedoms and our liberties are at stake right now. Individuals who are immigrants come up to me each and every day, afraid to go to school, to take their children to school, afraid to go to work. In my beloved Brooklyn, there's a little community called Little Haiti. It's been shut down. parts in Queens, Dominican community, shut down. Washington Heights, quiet. Immigrant communities are afraid. Individuals who have been witnesses to crimes, who you won as witnesses in the courts, afraid to go to courts because he issued an executive order that said that houses of faith and courthouses and schoolhouses are no longer sensitive places, and that it's up to ICE's discretion to determine whether or not they should go into a house of faith to enforce immigration laws. And so not even houses of faith are safe. But I want to be clear that as your Attorney General, I will not bow, I will not bend, and I will not break. I walk into that office each and every day with an army of attorneys, 800 to be exact, and we defend your rights without fear and without favor, because no one is above the law, including the President of the United States, and the Office of the Attorney General will continue to stand up for each and every one of you, because now is most definitely a time for those of us who believe in the rule of law and who value our most basic rights and who did not elect a king. We've got to step up and we've got to fight back, and we've got to let individuals know that this is our country and that we should not be afraid of government. Government should be a tool to help people. Government should be there to serve people. We should not fear government. We are seeing the most brazen and undemocratic attack on our rights. And so we've been filing lawsuits after lawsuits, again with ACLU getting TROs, temporary restraining orders, and getting preliminary injunctions, birthright citizenship, FEMA, the Treasury Department, DOJ, Elon Musk, unelected, unvetted, not even a government employee who has access to your personal and private information, your social security numbers, your addresses, your tax returns. The dismantling of the Consumer Financial Control Board. The dismantling of the Department of Education. Grants, NIH, the National Institute of Health, where they're doing groundbreaking research on finding a cure to cancer and Parkinson's and heart disease. The University of Albany, Stony Brook, and other universities in the state of New York, eliminated, cut off. Research grants, educational grants, DEI. The list goes on and on and on. Tariffs. Yeah. And now, openly defying a United States Supreme Court ruling. And the question that was posed or yelled out by someone who believes this is group participation is, what do we do? But I love it. The Supreme Court or the federal court, district court needs to hold a hearing and call in some of the heads of some of these agencies and hold them in contempt. Get the facts on why they refuse to comply. Because once you pass that Rubicon, then we are in a state of crisis. And we cannot allow individuals to be kidnapped in the middle of the night and then swept up in an ICE raid and basically taken off to a gulag in El Salvador with no due process, which is foundational to our democracy. None whatsoever. Regardless of the charges, everyone is entitled to due process. So we fight this onslaught of illegal executive orders which do not have the force of law. You cannot write law simply by signing an executive order with a stupid Sharpie. You cannot trample on the rights of a sovereign state like New York. That's why we have the 10th Amendment. You can't commandeer New York State and basically say you're going to do as you're told. You're going to follow my agenda. That is not how democracy works. We cannot normalize this behavior. And we cannot shrink from our responsibilities to uphold the law. And we cannot sit idly by and allow this to happen. And you can't just rely upon all of the individuals on this stage and or myself. You, each and every one of you, have a responsibility as a New Yorker and as someone who cares about others. And we cannot be paralyzed by fear. And that is why I'm working 24 hours and using the resources at my disposal to fight back as your Attorney General. Listen, I'm going to really be honest. When I was elected, a lot of you were like, we're not too sure about her. A lot of you had some low expectations. But I'm from Brooklyn, and I'm scrappy. And I love a good fight. And so this is the time where you need someone with steel in their backbone and someone who knows a lot about standing up and fighting back. For those who are members or who work or lead not-for-profits, we are having a webinar again, to inform not-for-profits on what they can do to stand up and defend the rights of others. We've been having webinars. I've had webinars with elected officials, webinars with farmers, webinars with universities, webinars with the medical profession, webinars with the LGBTQ community, given the attack on trans rights. We've been having webinars each and every week, again, informing individuals about their rights and what you can do to protect New Yorkers and protect all individuals. In addition to that, we've been filing amicus briefs in those cases where we do not have standing. Again, joining with ACLU, we've been writing letters. We've been writing about DEI, guidance letters to individuals concerned about DEI. What is the Supreme Court ruling? How does it impact DEI? We've been talking to the trans community. When he issued an executive order with respect to trans, we wrote to hospitals and say, you have to continue offering gender-affirming care. It's essential. It's really critical. You cannot back away from offering care to the trans community. And we've got to stand up for reproductive rights at a time when reproductive rights is also under threat. And we've got to thank that doctor in upstate New York who, as you know, I'm sure a lot of you know, the state of Louisiana issued a judgment against her because she provided mifepristone to someone from Louisiana who came to New York for reproductive care. And now that doctor is under attack. And in Louisiana, they're considering indicting that doctor. Yeah. But I want to thank the clerk because he basically took that judgment from Louisiana and ripped it up and said, not in New York State. So for those who believe in a pluralistic, multiracial society, for those who believe that we are all one, For those who believe the differences between you and I are really irrelevant. For those who recognize that we support immigrants and we recognize what immigrants provide to our economy. If you believe in that ideal, if you believe that this is a multicultural society, and if you believe that we are one and that we've got a responsibility and a duty to take care of a stranger, to feed someone who is hungry, to clothe someone who is naked, then I need to work with you, and I need to stand with you, particularly at this time. I am not going to give up, and I'm not going to give in to a bully. I'm going to strike back. We all have a responsibility to speak out, to resist, and to use the tools at our disposal to protect our democracy and the country that we love dearly. There is just too much on the line, my friends, and he does, and his administration represents an existential threat to everything that I believe in. So they can continue to attack me with baseless attacks, but I'm going to continue to walk into my office, and I'm going to sue the bastard. Thank you.
See, there's just lots of reasons to be glad you're a New Yorker, despite it all. So we did take things out of order a little bit. So next we're going to go to speaker for the Immigration Coalition, Rosanna Eugenio, the legal director. Before she just comes in, I just saying, look, one of the things about being New Yorkers, even if we don't all agree on every immigration law in this country, how many of us have immediate family who are immigrants? So my family came here starting actually at the turn of the 20th century, escaping the pogroms of Eastern Europe. Then some came later, escaping Nazis. And my family is really into genealogy, and we have like everyone's paperwork. Nobody had legal papers when they got here, just for the record. We have like the boats they got on, the dates they came. One grandparent was like, seemingly born on the ocean. So whether they're, and so it's been a great debate. Well, then what are you? Are you an immigrant? Are you she was born on the ocean. Nobody had paperwork. And yet here we are. The amazing part of New York is the entire history of our state and our city is that we welcome immigrants from everywhere, usually fleeing somewhere they can't be anymore, all coming here for a better life for themselves and their children, becoming part of the fabric of our society, of our city, and making sure that New York City is the best place to eat in the entire world. Just saying. I know I'm Manhattan. My Queens colleagues probably win the fight over who has the best restaurants from all over the world. We won't go there. But I think it's so important to understand the attacks on immigrants, whatever their status, is truly not only terrifying, but it's destroying our country. Our farmers don't have anybody coming to work their farms. Our construction industry apparently doesn't have very many people coming to show up for work for construction. I read a statistic, and you'll probably have a better one, that over 25% of the workers in the state are not U.S. citizens. Not clear exactly what their status is, but the workers of New York are from all over the world. And our AG referenced it, I just want to repeat it again. This guy named Musk and this insane group of children named Dodge, his Dodge children, they have your IRS records. They're not even the government. And you know what is also true about people who come to this country for a better life? Even if they're not legal, they're paying their taxes. And they don't have social security numbers, so they file under a specific set of letters that really only people who aren't citizens file their taxes under. And they're pouring tax money in, even though they're not eligible for benefits. But it also means that Dodge children and Musk now know exactly whose IRS paperwork to start with in their revenge tour. And so it's truly, truly terrifying what is happening, not just for civil society, but also for our economy. Because again, when the farmers can't get their fields planted or picked in a few months, guess who's paying for that too? All of us. So with that, I want to welcome the legal director for New York Immigration Coalition, Rosanna Eugenio.
Hi, everyone. I just want to start off by saying how thrilled I am to be following the Attorney General, who my group of friends affectionately call her Auntie. So Auntie Tish, that's amazing. Kind of surreal and thrilled. So I'm going to speak from what I know and from the heart and from my own experiences and from my experiences through my job and my work history. And I want to start off by talking about an email that many immigrants and U.S. citizens, Ukrainians, Afghans, people who came here legally received last week. Subject line, not specific, not directed at any particular name, but subject, it's time for you to leave. It's time for you to leave, and I want you to just keep that in your mind. It's time for you to leave. In the last month or so, we've had a 20-year-old Juan Carlos Lopez Gomez, born in Georgia, that was detained in Florida for speaking a native Mayan language and detained for 48 hours and couldn't get out. Because why exactly? Why? Born in the United States, there was an ICE hold on Mr. Lopez Gomez, and his mom desperately showing a birth certificate and a social, trying to get him out of jail, and the judge desperately saying, I can't do anything about that. And it seems like a one-off, like, okay, well, it was an isolated incident. We talked about Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who's in El Salvador, and the allegations against him, that he allegedly a gang member and all of these things, the basis of that comes from an affidavit by a disgraced former Maryland law enforcement officer who was then later employed by ICE. Seems like a one-off. Okay, well, that just happened, isolated incident. Disgraced officer might have, we're not sure if the allegations are truthful. Fast forward to the last couple weeks, and Jose Hermosillo, 19, walking while brown in Tucson, Arizona, detained for 10 days because the affidavit against him by the Border Patrol official said that he allegedly said he was from Mexico, here unlawfully, and it's a sworn statement from an officer. So if you follow along that pattern, it seems like, maybe a one-off, maybe a mistake, maybe on purpose, right? It's time for you to leave. We're not collateral, right? It's not just about immigrants, it's about everybody. When the government says, it's time for you to leave. Maybe it's your turn, right? Maybe today it's immigrants, but tomorrow it's those who receive Social Security benefits. Oh, don't want to pay that. Maybe it's time for you to leave. You hold a diverse religious opinion. Maybe it's time for you to leave. You belong to a different political party. Maybe it's time for you to leave, right? That's where we are. So to the gentleman who asked that question, what happens when, our institutions fail? What happens when you're drowning? You swim and you fight. That's what you do. As Donna said, you take to the streets. As the Attorney General said, you sue the bastards, right? You fight. That's what's left. You take to the streets. That's what's left when the institutions crumble around you. So it's not just about immigrants, it's about all of us. When we ask you to care about a 4-year-old facing removal right? Facing a judge by themselves with like a little My Little Pony t-shirt on. There was an article in Gothamist this morning, a little boy with a pizza t-shirt on, facing a judge, where the judge's first line is, I'm here to tell you because the government says that you might have to leave the United States, to a 7-year-old, unrepresented, because all of the funding supporting basic human decency when it comes to these children has been cut off. Because why? Because it's time for them to leave. Registration. We have a new registration requirement, and for those of you who know your history, the idea of registration has an incredibly painful history in this country and in countries around the world. What does registration mean? It means you have to be registered and show proof of it. In a multi-ethnic, multiracial, multilingual society, especially in New York, on what basis are you going to stop someone looking for their registration papers? Who are you going to stop? Right? I wear my hair curly now. I used to straighten it out. Who are you going to stop and ask for their papers, please? And demand to show that you've registered or not. And based on those cases I've laid out, would they even care or listen if you say you're a US citizen or you have status? Or will they ask questions later? Because lately the questions have been asked after the fact, and only when it's come to the attention of the media, or only when you have heroes like the NYCLU and ACLU and others bringing these cases. But for every case you hear about in the news, there's all of these people who do not have that support. And that's why it's important to fund institutions and fund organizations and fund those on the front lines of this fight. Because they're coming after us too, right? I'm on 118 of 120 payments of public service loan forgiveness, and guess what? I have no shot right now of getting that loan forgiveness. It's just not happening because they're coming for us, right? We've had the big law firms crumble, some of them. Some of them stand up, some of them crumbled. They're going after the 501c3 designation, the nonprofit designation of institutions like Harvard, but also nonprofits. They're going to threaten our leadership. They're utilizing tools like chilling of free speech to come after leadership and come after activists and come after frontline workers. There's threats of using criminal charges and civil charges to lock us up, to prevent us from doing our jobs, crippling the institution, crippling the person, crippling us financially, so that we're no longer able to do our jobs. But as the Attorney General said, we will not bend and we will not break. And maybe I'm afraid sometimes, right? Maybe I am, but I'm still gonna do my job because that's the right thing to do. I want to talk about a conversation I had with my mother recently, same thing about registration. And it was a back and forth on which documents she was going to carry on her. I'm going to carry my passport card. I'm going to carry my passport. And I'm like, Mom, I'm not going to comply. Even though I have that ID, I'm not going to comply. I'm going to ask first, why are you stopping me? Why? Because the Constitution says that you have to have a basis for stopping me. You can't just stop me because I look like what I look like. That's the first line. Why are we complying with unjust laws and unjust institutions and unjust enforcement? Yes, I'm afraid, but I will not comply and I will not submit to unjust laws. And neither should you. And if you have the privilege to support people who may need that support, utilize that privilege. Stand up with that person. Film the interactions. Do what you can with what privilege you have. You mentioned $400 million that we might be missing from a particular judgment. Well, we're asking for about 165 to support legal services and to support the build-out of legal services, right? As they chill and jail and intimidate us, we need more of us out here in this fight. We need to pipeline more lawyers and more support into fighting these unjust laws. And so we need the BUILD Act to support bringing in law students and others into this fight. We need the $100 million for legal services as we're slowly being starved off and defunded. And we have kids and we have the defenseless unable to support themselves at the same time that the rules are being changed up, right? People came here legally through process. They're following a process and they just keep changing the process, eliminating the process. You're now alien enemies. By what? Fiat decree? The Sharpie? You're now an alien enemy because the Sharpie said so? That's what it is. By executive order, by pen, by power-hungry control monsters, you are now not following the process that you have been following. We're going to snatch you from the streets. We're going to snatch you from your home in Sackett's Harbor. We're going to take you and disappear you from your home, from New York to Louisiana to Texas to California, elsewhere. You're not going to tell people, your family, where you are for days at a time. 10 days Jose Hermosillo spent detained as a U.S. citizen. Imagine who you don't hear about. That's what this is about. So what do? We organize. We take to the streets if you have that privilege. You write letters to Congress if you have that privilege. You support your neighbors and your community and the person to your left and your right who needs that support. You ask for the funding that we need to support these institutions and programs. You ask for law enforcement, for legislation to stop law enforcement, our local law enforcement, for colluding with these plainclothes, unmarked, unidentified, alleged ICE agents who take people from the street and take people from their homes. If you're law enforcement, you shouldn't want to be associated with that. But we can end that formal collusion with legislation. So before it's time for us to leave, let's tell Elon Musk, let's tell Donald Trump, let's tell J.D. Vance and that whole crew that it's time for them to leave.
So, of course, we're running a little late, because all good things run a little late. But I'm delighted that our last speaker, in the order we've now taken it, is Kellie Leeson from Empire Indivisible. And why it's so important is because so many of the question cards, we've heard about legal responses and court cases and the fights that are being taken on by the ACLU and the AG, and now the unique and complicated issues for immigrants. But almost all the questions are about what do we do as regular people who want to get involved in the fight, who want to make sure, oh, sorry, 1 second. I'm yelling at small children, I'm sorry. So what do regular people do to make sure we can take back our democracy, to fight and to challenge and to participate in the ways that we can? So I'd like to invite Kellie up.
All right. The last speaker, my goodness. Thank you, Senator Krueger, for inviting me and Empire State Indivisible to be here with all of you tonight. And thank you to the speakers for all of the inspiration. And then thanks to all of you for coming out tonight. I think you should all give yourselves a round of applause for being here. You know, as so many people have said, one of the biggest things is showing up. And that's especially important right now when things feel overwhelming, chaotic, as we've talked about, and frankly, as a couple of people had noted, really scary. I know I'm scared. How many of you are scared right now? Yeah, it's a pretty terrifying time, and as Senator Krueger has noted, it's pretty shocking as well. We did not expect to be in this place. And so I really just want to share a little bit about Empire State Indivisible and how you can get involved. Empire State Indivisible came together after the first election of Donald Trump. We thought that was going to be it, but here we are again. We were outraged, but also very determined. Using the Indivisible Guide, we built a powerful community of activists demanding better from every level of our government. City and state programs depend on federal funding for housing, public health, infrastructure. I know we've all been hearing about congestion pricing in Penn Station because of the engagement with the federal government. When Washington fails us, state and local leaders must step up and fight back. And we heard how Senator Krueger passed the Superfund legislation, really made sure that Prop 1 passed. Those are the protections that our state and our city can provide for us. When federal protections are rolled back, New York City and New York State becomes our last line of defense. Yeah. In 2018, right here in New York City, we exposed the Independent Democratic Conference, a group of state senators supported by former Governor Andrew Cuomo, who were blocking tenant protections, reproductive rights, climate protections, and progressive legislation. The work that we did then didn't just highlight the problems, but it drove change and legislation that is now protecting us under this Trump administration. Yeah. And it showed us as Empire State Indivisible and all the indivisibles across the state that we have power to disrupt the status quo. This was something that had been in place for years. We helped to disrupt that with all of the work that we were able to do, and I think it was all of that power that has invigorated us to stay around all of these years later. And at the heart of all of that, we built trust, the kind of trust that makes real community action possible. Trust that together, all of us here, that we can create lasting change. So we have been building for this absolutely unprecedented moment for the last 8 years. And we're proud to be part of a nationwide movement of over 6,000 indivisible groups with many hundreds right here in New York. Grassroots, local, united, and working alongside a number of issue-based groups, such as the New York Immigration Council, New York Renews, Invest in Our New York, a number of issue-based organizations were using their expertise as we do the grassroots work. Our mission is simple: to get more people fired up, like all of you here, and actively engaged in our democracy, to demand that those in power answer to us, the people, not the other way around, and to pass policies that dismantle the systems of inequality that hold so many back. We're living in a moment where it's really, really easy to feel small, where the problems seem too big and the wins too far away. But I want to remind you that we are not powerless. Together, all of us here, we cannot be ignored. This moment calls on us to step up. We can't just sit back and wait for the change. All of us need to be the change. And I know watching the news is super depressing, so let's make the headlines ourselves. I will say the Indivisible has been featured many times on the Rachel Maddow show, so for some of us, that means stepping into roles we never thought we would be filling, like me here tonight, and that this moment demands all of us to do some things that are a bit uncomfortable. As was just said, sometimes it can be really scary as well. In our organizing calls, we always get really fired up when someone says, you know, somebody should do something about that. And you know what? That's probably true, but that somebody is probably the person saying it. So in this moment, that somebody is all of us here tonight. We must be relentless, even when it feels like we're not making progress. And that's when it matters most. You can ask anybody, I'm sure, who is part of the civil rights movement, the women's movement, the gay rights movement, and all of us are stepping into that legacy right now. I heard someone say that politicians are a lagging indicator. So that is why our voices are so important. Call them constantly. I know Senator Krueger is used to that, to let them know what actions you want to see from them. And while we've all talked about, we're really lucky to have Senator Krueger representing all of you, we need to make sure that all of our elected leaders are as forward-looking and as bold. So keep calling Senator Krueger, let her know when you're happy with her and when you want her to push a little bit harder. So when I am not representing the Empire State Indivisible, I work on global refugee issues in places like Sudan, Jordan, Colombia, where more and more people are running out of places to turn. As asylum space shrinks around the world, even those who find safety often find another crisis of limited health care, food, water, all of that is being exacerbated right now by the US foreign aid cuts. So it's a dark time, here and abroad. From Washington, we feel like it's closing in on us. And it's tempting to shut down. I know sometimes I want to just shut down, as Senator Krueger was saying, just watch Netflix, but we don't have that luxury, not now. The threat is too real, and our power is tangible. So let's practice, let's use our civic muscles. I know some of ours are a little bit rusty, so we've got lots of work to do. A couple of times we've mentioned the real threats to immigration right now. So while we think, like, what can we do about Trump? We also need to keep a watchful eye there, but we cannot ignore the critical work that must happen right here, right now, in our own backyard. So let's protect our immigrant neighbors right here in New York. A couple of people have mentioned it. We must pass the Dignity Not Detention Act and the New York for All Act in Albany. The Dignity Not Detention Act would end the use of local jails for immigration detention and would cut off contracts with ICE. The New York for All Act would keep ICE and CBP out of areas of schools and shelters. And these are just not policies. These are shields for our communities. These are our tools that we need to fight back. We know what's happening to our immigrant neighbors isn't just about immigration. It's about power, who holds it and who is left powerless. It is about fear and creating that in all of us. So we know what's happening to our neighbors today could easily happen to all of us tomorrow. At the city level, we've also got a real opportunity to take control of our future with this mayoral primary on June 24th. We need to elect someone who will fight for us and will lead with integrity. So let's be clear, we cannot afford to go backward. We have a scandal-riddled mayor right now, a scandal-riddled president right now. So let's make sure our city does not fall in the hands of scandal and corruption once again. So let's take advantage of that amazing moment on June 24th. So if you're feeling angry, scared, and unsure, that means you're paying attention. But don't just sit in that anger. Don't just sit in isolation. This is about building community, building trust. So find your activist home, your political home, your organizing home. And why does that matter? Because I think many of you have heard recently about this 3.5% rule. It's getting a lot of attention. Political science have shown that when just 3.5% of the population engages in sustained protest, change happens. Here in the US, that's about 12 million people. We can do that. We can do that. And even David Brooks said recently, I'm really not a movement guy. I don't naturally march in demonstrations or attend rallies that I'm not covering as a journalist. But this is what America needs right now. Trump is shackling the greatest institutions in American life. We have nothing to lose but our chains. So 3.5% isn't everyone, but it's enough. And it starts with you and David Brooks, apparently. So, a couple of calls to action to finish out. Here's how you can make meaningful action that starts today. Join the movement. Sign up with Empire State Indivisible, my group, or with Manhattan Eastside Indivisible. Our table is right outside. Many of you signed up already. Please join us. We welcome you. Or if we're not your home, find your organizing home. We can help to plug you in. If you sign up and you're like, this is not my vibe, we can totally find someplace else for you. There's so much work that's being done right now, and we need everyone to be showing up and finding their home. Secondly, take local and state action. I mentioned a couple of pieces of legislation. Call your assembly members, because I know this is stuck in the assembly. Many of you are in Rebecca C. Wright's or Alex Borez's assembly districts. Call them and urge them to move the Dignity Not Detention Act out of committee and ask them to push for the passage of the New York for All Act to protect immigrant communities. And keep the pressure on all of our elected officials, including Senator Schumer. He is the minority leader. How much power does that man have? So let's make sure that we tell him he needs to lead boldly or step aside. Thirdly, show up and get out on those streets. So we can start with, on Mondays, there are a couple of different actions. There are Monday night vigils in Foley Square for the Democracy Not Autocracy vigil from 6 to 7. And I just learned about the Interfaith Mondays, which is 5:30 at Columbus Circle. These are places where you can be with your people to make sure your voices get heard. And on May 1st, the May Day National Day of Action, you've already seen the hands-off protests, the Not a King protests. We are building momentum, but we cannot stop here. Join us on May 1st at 5 p.m. at Foley Square. And if you are like, leave here and you're like, what is it that I'm supposed to be doing? Check out mobilize.us for upcoming rallies and actions near you. And then lastly, vote and stay informed. We do have our mayoral election coming up. We're tabling all the time now to talk to people about ranked choice voting. Go to rankthevotenyc.org if you're a little confused about it still, or some of your friends are. June 24th is the mayoral primary. I was reminded by one of you here today that early voting will start on June 14th. And he also told me that only about 7% of people showed up in the 2018 primary. That's not okay. So let's all show up at that primary and vote for somebody who is forward-looking. So I know all that I've said can feel unsatisfying. I feel unsatisfied too. None of what I have said feels big enough for the threats that are coming at us. But we need to keep showing up and keep bringing your friends, bring more people along as we continue to build momentum, build community, and build trust. That is what this administration is trying to destroy. We don't have to do everything, but we all have to do something. In Brazil, during the Bolsonaro years, protesters would say, "Don't let go of anyone's hand." So let's join hands and let's fight this together.
Well, we really do have an amazing panel here tonight, and I just realized we're all women. We probably violated a law. We love men too. I'm just thinking we might have violated a Trump diversity rule. I'm not sure. So we don't have time for all the questions because it's already, so late, but I'm going to start with some of them. And they're really diverse because we have lots of different interests. And don't worry if you're leaving, that's fine. I understand it's a weeknight, it's already after 8 o'clock. But the tables are still out there for other groups you can get materials from so that you know other ways you can participate. What can I say to a friend who lives in a red county to encourage them to call or complain to their elected officials, tied into how do we talk to people who really don't agree with us on any of these issues? And I think that's like one of the great challenges for us all in working towards elections and national efforts, because we are a big party. Whether you think of yourself as a Democrat or not, it's a big tent to save this country. And you have to be willing to listen to people and hear where they're coming from and realize that you probably won't agree on everything with almost anybody, but that you can find far more things that you do agree on. Something we didn't talk about a lot tonight, but is absolutely driving what's going to change the position of people in this country? The economy. For so many people throughout this country, they thought that they were voting for a president who was going to help them with their economic problems. But, well, right, some of us knew that wasn't true, but other people thought that that was true. And actually, they thought the Democrats, my party, weren't doing a very good job. And I'm willing to take that hit also. We made lots of mistakes. But when you look at the economic data and who it's negatively impacting, it's actually hitting hardest areas of the country and the populations who voted for Donald Trump and the Republican Congress. So they're getting hit the hardest, and they're feeling it. And they'll continue to feel it. And so you can talk to people who you think, some people have brought to me, I didn't even know what to say to family at the holidays because some of us are Trump people. I was so happy I don't have any in my family, I'm just saying. 58 of us at Seder, not one Trumper amongst us. So I felt really great, but I know from lots of other friends that was not the case. And so it's being able to talk to them, well, why do you think this about the president? And are you aware that this is true and this isn't true? Which is why getting data and getting information from organizations like we've heard of tonight can be so valuable, because we do need to talk to people who don't see eye to eye with us. And we need to remind everyone that if we don't rebuild the democracy that we seem to so quickly be losing, we don't have any hope for a future where we can work together and accomplish everybody's goals. One of the questions was, it feels like young people aren't involved the way we were in the 60s. So I know I'm looking at this audience, there's a lot of people more in my age categories. But you know what? You're maybe not just seeing them all. The youth of America at this point is so involved. Like the environment movement is driven by young people understanding that they're inheriting a planet that they may not be able to live on. And so maybe you don't necessarily know so many younger people who are involved in organizing and efforts, but in fact, that's one of the reasons Donald Trump is going after universities, right? Because smart young people are saying, wait a second here, we have questions. We have questions. We don't like what's happening. So yes, if you know young people who don't know how to get involved in important work, trust me, organizations who are here tonight can help direct them, but don't give up on the next generations. I think that we have some tremendous, tremendous young people coming up and leading charges. There's a lot of questions, so I'm going to turn this to Donna, even though I'm not sure she can give us straight. All these questions about Donald Trump says we're not going to have another election. Donald Trump says he's going to have a third term. Donald Trump says he doesn't have to follow what the Supreme Court says. What are we going to do about it? Donna, what is the answer when Donald Trump says he's not going to have another election, or he is and is just going to run again, and he doesn't have to care what the courts say?
Is this on? Oh.
Yes.
Well, the honest answer is, I won't say that. It's not just in the courts. It's not just in the streets. It's not just in the media. It's all of the above, right? We got to be in the streets. We got to be in the courts. We got to be in the halls of the legislature and pursue every peaceful, lawful means that we have at our disposal. I refuse to believe that the people united will be defeated, okay? I believe that if we don't give up, if we don't let the naysayers, part of their strategy is naysaying. Part of it is like putting out all this crap, We have to take them at their word, but we have to always fight back. Pick our battles, and there are a lot of them, right? And just not give up. So I know that's vague. I know it's unsatisfying, but that's what I got.
I'm just going to add a little bit to that. Before we get to that presidential election, there's other elections that you all need to be involved in. And so I would look at that as well. Think twice if you're going to lose. Right?
Thank you. All right. So, this is one I got hit with on the way in the door, so I'll take it. So is it possible for New York State to withhold federal taxes and divert those funds to the state and city? This way, New York will no longer be subsidizing a federal government who wants to cut all of our critical programs like Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security, Veterans Affairs, and we could better serve the people of New York with our tax money. Well, here's the problem, because I did ask about this. Because of the way the federal laws are written, New York State cannot pass a law to do that, but even more importantly, because you probably know this, when you pay your taxes, you pay your federal taxes directly to the IRS. It doesn't come through the state for us to intercept it and not send it to Washington. When you pay your state and city taxes, it comes to the state and then we give New York City its share. But we don't have the ability to do that at the federal level, and I'm quite sure this administration isn't changing the rules. You might have noticed that the governor of Maine actually suggested this. And so that's why I went hunting, well, Maine's going to do it. Why can't New York? Well, because bizarrely, Maine is the one state in the country where its corporate taxes go directly to the state to be passed to the federal government. They don't go directly to the IRS. That's not the way, I know, good for Maine, whoever figured that one out. So Maine can do it on their corporate taxes. Nobody else can do it on any of the taxes. And of course, the Trump administration immediately said they were going to send the governor of Maine to jail for even suggesting it. But I give her full support for trying the argument. So then, another constituent reached out and said, well, can I just give you my federal tax money directly instead of sending it to the federal government? And I was like, well, there's some legal risks for you, but apparently there's not an IRS, so I'm not sure who will notice, but I still wouldn't recommend it. But they said, well, what if we just put it all in an escrow account? So I actually asked the state controller, because the state controller actually controls the money. I said, can you open an escrow account and we'll all put our federal taxes in that and then we'll use it for state purposes? And he said, yeah, no, we can't do that. I was like, no, really, it's a good idea. So we keep struggling to come up with answers to that, but unfortunately, I don't think we can, and I would never advise any of you individually not to pay your federal taxes because there are ramifications for that. Apparently, unless you work for the White House, and then you don't have to follow any of the laws. All right. There are concerns about, people asking about how to fight the Trump agenda. I think this whole night has been about how to galvanize opposition to the Trump agenda. And that includes something that we haven't spent a lot of time talking about, but we are very close to being able to change the control of the U.S. Congress in the next election, which is not this year, but is in 26. And we have Republican, sorry, I'm going to be partisan here for a minute. We have Republican members of Congress who keep saying, oh, no, we won't do any of those things, like cut your Medicaid or your Medicare or your Social Security. And you know how they proved it? They went to their leadership and said, we'll vote for all those things, but you have to take those words out of the resolution so that later when we do cut those things, I can say with a straight face, I didn't know that's what I was voting to cut. Like, come on, people. So we need to hold everyone accountable. And by the way, several people have said it tonight, and they're absolutely right, including me. You hold all of your elected officials accountable. We're going to fail you a decent amount of the time. I've been in office for 23 years. Trust me, I know. But you need to hold us accountable, and you actually need to replace us when we are not delivering what needs to get done. And it doesn't matter whether we're Democrats or Republicans. These are just fundamental issues if you're going to hold on to and protect your democracy. I, the other night, in an unusual moment, with chatting with some of my Republican colleagues upstate, demanded that they coup their own party. I said, what are you doing? You know this is insane. You know you're destroying the state of New York and the country. You have to stand up to them and take back your party. I don't actually believe in living in one-party country. I don't think it's good for anyone. I was like, but we don't have a Republican Party. You guys let it get killed. So you have a responsibility to rebuild it. And a couple of them sort of nodded their head yes. And I said, no, seriously. Anyone who was your mentor in your life as a Republican elected official, if they've passed away, they're now rolling over in their graves. You have to do something. And you know what? If you don't, and I really did say this out loud to a bunch of them, and now I'm saying it to all of you, I said, I never wanted to be a Democratic elected official. I was drafted against my will. I never intended to run for office, and now I'm here 23 years later. I said, if you guys don't get your act together, I'm going to have to go become a Republican and rebuild your party, and I'm really getting old and tired, but somebody has to do it. I don't know how well I do with that, but I actually think that people have to just use whatever they can, whatever skills they have, whatever thoughts they have, shoot them out there and let them be knocked down or let them build into the next great idea for this country. Okay, a lot of this is I don't want to feel powerless. I feel powerless. Again, I think the message tonight, get yourself involved. All of the things Kellie just listed, all those groups. There's amazing websites with activities. I seem to get them every day, all these things we can do. I think on behalf of the Immigration Coalition, one of the things that's disturbed me the most this week, maybe because I used to work in emergency food programs, the Trump administration has said and already cut the funds through FEMA to any emergency food pantries and soup kitchens who won't agree to not feed people without legal status. So they've taken money already and they've said they're going to do this. These are churches, synagogues, mosques, volunteers, feeding children, older people, families. And the concept that the federal government says, we'll take all your funds and food away, and so much of the food somehow has a federal connection, the USDA surplus food, the FEMA funds, federal funds to large organizations like the New York City Food Bank. So if the Trump administration actually seriously says, you have to get ID and prove someone has legal status before you can feed them a meal or give them the pantry package, I feel like every New Yorker has to get involved in helping their emergency food providers because they're going to be in so much trouble and they're already needing so much help. It just continues to go and go and go. Let's see. Concerns about federal authoritarianism seeping into local law enforcement, aggressive policing, unconstitutional searches, targeting of activists. And so even though we are a sanctuary city, and yes, it is true, we need to expand our laws to be a sanctuary state, I guess I'll turn this back over to actually anyone. Are there things we should be doing specifically to make sure that our police forces are staying within the boundaries of what we know is our Constitution and our laws? Uh-oh. Yeah, sorry.
When's the mayoral election?
June. The primary's June.
I know. That was a rhetorical question. Actually, we just came out with a report about racist vehicle stops. Pay attention to the budget, okay? I mean, I don't want to open a can of worms here, but they don't call the budget the big ugly for nothing, right? Wrapped up into this budget, thanks to our governor, are a lot of things that have nothing to do with the budget. It's a way to get stuff done, right? rolling back the discovery laws, right, that were passed as a reform because New York had the most opaque pretrial evidence sharing rules in the nation practically, right? We've had 5 years of discovery reform, and the governor is refusing to let the budget go through without rolling them back. And she's done it in a way that has cut out the advocates from any conversations about what those reforms should look like. So watch it. Pay attention to what they do, and let them know how you feel about it, okay?
Eugene, did you also have whatever?
Yeah, there's a local law and city council where there would be private causes of action. There would be, some of these institutions would pay for their collusion with ICE, and so passing something like that where it creates rights for people who have had their rights violated is another way of fighting back. And also just, police, they're part of your community and they're your neighbors. Again, no law enforcement should want to be associated with what's going on by these federal agents. You should not want to be associated with snatching families and kids and disappeared. And some of these are being easily impersonated because you have a DHS secretary that cosplays a FBI agent or an ICE agent. So, there are things there, talking to people one-on-one as your friends and neighbors, but also nobody should want to be associated with this.
Great. And, the difference between, even when we're frustrated with New York City and some other parts of the state, in Nassau County, which people know, it's just right there on Long Island, their county executive decided to announce that he was creating his own militia of people he would appoint and give police authority to, including working as ICE agents. That's completely outside law, and it's not some other state in the country where you think that kind of stuff would happen. It's Nassau County. So you have to be incredibly vigilant, even here at home where we think we have pretty good protections and rights, because that's just mortifying to me. And it's already 8:26, so I am going to end with a quote, which I like, from Ben Rhodes. If you don't like what is happening to this country, you don't need to wait for someone to come along and save it. You need to each other, and you need to do it. The opposite of shame is pride. Let's be proud of fighting back, of caring about one another, of committing to rebuilding what is being destroyed, because America is not just about the powerful becoming more powerful. At its best, it is about understanding, beating the longest of, it is about the underdog beating the longest of odds. So I want to thank the 4 panelists I had tonight, Kellie, Donna, Eugenio, and of course, she had to leave, but our amazing Attorney General Tish James, and my staff, and the CUNY Graduate Center for making this all happen. And again, we had over 1,300 people streaming, as well as all of us here tonight. So thank you so much.